Hi, I'm Brent Titcomb, and we're currently in Toronto, Canada. And I'm a singer-songwriter, and I've been a songwriter for about 40 years. I didn't start songwriting right away. I started off in the early folk days. So we were all learning the early Woody Guthrie songs and the Dylan songs, and that lasted for quite a number of years. And I have to say, in those days, nobody ever dreamed of writing their own songs. So we were all, learning songs that others had written. A lot of them in the folk world that had kind of a social conscience to it. And I was with a folk group that in Canada was one of two folk rock bands. So we were one of the earliest people to amplify our acoustic instruments. And we were together for about 5 years. So about in 1968, after being together for 5 years and had enough of one another, when I left, I started playing my acoustic guitar quietly with myself, and lo and behold, I wrote my first song, which was really amazing to me. In the context of the band, I was the comedian, so it was somewhat similar to Peter, Paul and Mary, where Paul Stuckey was the comedian, Mary Travers was this fantastic lead singer, and Peter Yarrow was the guitar player. And it happened to be that I was a tall, thin guy like Paul Stuckey, and the guitar player was a really good, musician, and we had a blonde lead singer. But that was just happenstance. With this long life with the band, 5 years, I really felt the pressure of being a comedian, having to make people laugh night after night after night. So when I discovered writing songs and that people enjoyed what I did simply by sitting down and singing, it was a great relief to me. And that started this whole next chapter in my life of songwriting. And I had written only about 5 songs. And I met a fellow that had subbed for a bass player, who by that, and then I met him a few years later, and by that time he had gotten interested in record producing, and he was producing Anne Murray. And she had a huge hit called Snowbird, and they were looking for a follow-up hit for Snowbird. And so he asked me what kind of songs and everything, and he said, well, come on over to my place, and I'd like to hear them. So we went over to his place, I played some songs, he phoned up Anne Murray, we went over to the Four Seasons Hotel, played her the same songs I played for Brian Ahern, and the next thing I know, she's recorded Sing High, Sing Low. And that was chosen as the follow-up song to Snowbird, and it opened up this whole chapter to my life of being a singer-songwriter. And I had the good fortune through Anne Murray of other people recording or performing my material, which was like Andy Williams, in a special use, Sing High as a song that was segued with other songs, and Donnie and Marie Osmonds, so fairly notable people were singing or performing my material. And that really was how it all started. At that time, there was a certain innocence about making music, and not very many people had any kind of an idea about the business aspect of making music. There was a very, very little knowledge of music business in Canada at that time. So I saw it going from this very innocent, passionate way of making music, which motivates most musicians, to where we gradually became more aware of music business. And I have to say, in those days, we were very precious about our songwriting, and there wasn't a lot of co-writing. It wasn't till many years later that we heard that in Nashville, maybe 2, 3, 4 writers would write a song, which to us in those days was unthinkable. So that expanded our whole understanding of the creative process of songwriting. And to write a song, who cares how many people it takes, as long as it's a fantastic song. Songwriting, I think if you were to ask songwriters, they would all agree that there's something very mystical about it or magical about it. A lot of songwriters will say they have no idea where the song came from. It's like you're looking this way and suddenly the song comes in the back door. And so there's a more intuitive, an intuitive way of songwriting, and then there's being a journeyman, being a really a craftsman, where you know how to craft a song for a very specific task. If you're working as a a house writer for a publishing company. They may say, we need this type of song for this type of artist, and you go away and you write that song. So I don't think one is any better than the other, but and sometimes there's a blend of the two. You know, even that trade approach to songwriting, even in that context, that songwriter will have these kind of intuitive flashes where the songs seem to write themselves. As far as co-writing, it can be the same thing, where 2, 3, 4 people can be together jamming. Suddenly this song or this idea occurs, and before you know it, this group of people have fleshed it out into a song. And then by the same token, it can be the craft. You know, 2, 3, 4 people can get together and apply their craft. I don't think one is any better than the other. When I was, and my friends and cohorts that in the early days of songwriting that took this precious approach, you know, me and my precious little song, I think that we were limiting ourselves. If you have an opportunity to work with a songwriter who's had a lot of success, I think that's really wise to be open to that. And my son has really learned that at an early stage in his life. He was co-writing with songwriters when he was 15 years old. So for him, it's a natural thing. There are times when I would refer to myself as a Canadian singer-songwriter. And folk has this stigma to it now. So I choose when or when not to use that. My songs are more universal just because of the way I approach songwriting. Going from being a comedian, where that was, I would say my motivation as a comedian was insecurity. And for me, I had to have that laughter and acceptance. I was that insecure. As I switched and evolved more into a songwriter and was more received and accepted as a songwriter, it coincided with more confidence within myself. I saw that I had a gift of moving people, and I took that very seriously. And so then, at the time, there were a lot of socially conscious issues that were, you know, in the culture. And so I felt my responsibility was to comment on those, and they were very universal. So they would, in that sense, transcend my nationality. Now, I have really close friends that are singer-songwriters from the folk idiom in Canada, and a lot of their songs are about their travels, about place, about communities, about the land, and they sum up and sing about those things fantastically. And some of those songs, even now, are becoming part of the fabric of our culture. And those, I'm sure, in the years to come will be considered, you know, our traditional songs. Like there's a fellow by the name of Stan Rogers here in Canada who has passed on, but some of his songs have already become part of the fabric of our collective song catalog. And they speak of our country. He used to sing a lot about the East Coast and the Maritimes and sailors and sailing. So there's some people that sing very, very specific Canadian identity songs. I'm more universal. I try to see it as just part and parcel of my philosophy, you know, where I see us as all, you know, many limbs of the same being, and that it's the family of man, and that music is the language of all mankind. You know, if you travel the world with a musical instrument, it's like a key. You get into the most amazing situations. You know, you just pull out your guitar, doesn't matter whether you speak the language or not, and something is transmitted. So it's a real blessing to be a traveling musician, I think. Obviously, there had to be the very first folk festival in our country, in Canada, and the very first one was a festival called Mariposa. And there was, it began, I originated in Vancouver, British Columbia, and the origin of the very first folk festival was here in Ontario. So by the time I came to Ontario in 1965, it had already been in existence a couple of years. And one of the very early mentors or organizers of that festival used to go down into the States to Newport, to the folk festival in Newport. And her name was Estelle Klein. And she would bring back, her perception of what a folk festival was. And it was her that brought back the workshop idea. Up until that point, it was a main stage, and there was, basically a concert setting. But the whole idea of the workshop stage started to emerge. And that's where the performers, yes, they do their main stage, but then they would be assigned to a workshop stage and commingling with other performers. And the idea was that the audience would be able to have a more intimate setting, because there's usually fewer people gathered around the workshop setting. And the hope was that it wasn't like a mini concert, that you would stray away from your regular repertoire, find out songs that you could commingle on, so that it really was sharing knowledge, telling stories, fleshing out more of the background of how the song evolved. And hopefully that these people would bounce off one another, jam with one another. And people really loved that. They got to see many more sides of the performer than you would see on the main stage. And so now, many, many years later, in our country, folk festivals are happening from coast to coast throughout the whole summer. And you could just spend your entire summer going from one folk festival to another. And most folk festivals have several workshop stages. And one may be focused on guitar instrumental work. So all your finest guitar players that have come that weekend will gather there. And that can even be narrowed down to finger picking styles, or you have a flat picking style, or you have a country style, or you have a blues style. These are just, subcategory guitar style workshops. You can have percussion workshops that might have the different participants from Latin America or from Africa or from our indigenous groups here in Canada, that they would share a workshop stage. Then you have your singer-songwriter stages. So they'll have many stages throughout the day going through, and then sometimes the festival organizers, they throw out the theme of the workshop, and nobody has any idea what this means. You usually get this in the mail before you go, and you have some time to think about it. Maybe some songwriters would even write a song specifically for that workshop. Sometimes it leaves everybody completely flummoxed, and it doesn't really matter, because when everybody shows up, something happens anyways, But still, in our country, the folk world is under the radar in terms of, pop culture and mass media. It still gets, it doesn't get its share of the media. So for the average citizen, it doesn't even exist. But we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who part of their ritual is to go to folk festivals. They take their children, those children grow up, and they pick it up. Like my son, he started off, Liam Titcomb started off in diapers, His first folk festival was in the womb. He toddled around these folk festivals, so it's like in his soul. And a lot of the festival organizers, they're looking for who's going to carry on the torch. They're at this point in time where some of these festivals are 25 to 30 years old, and they're looking to see the next generation who's going to carry this on. So it's a very it's steeped in history and lineage, and it resonates with a lot of people. It's it's really quite shocking. I think that our culture, personally, I think our culture would suffer if this type of music didn't exist. Well, first of all, in those days, the only way to make a record was to go to a recording studio. It was a big recording studio. And this is even before the $50 an hour rooms where, you had an 8-track in a smaller room. So the only way for you to make a record was to book time in a real recording studio. And now with the advent of Porta Studios and whatnot, and Pro Tools and, the computer recording technology, like, you can make a fantastic record in your bedroom. So a lot of these large studios have gone out of business. And so you've got that. You can make a record. I have a friend of mine who goes down to South America with a 16-track tape deck, and he records people in the bush. He records indigenous peoples in the jungles of Ecuador. And these are like fantastic fidelity. Takes great mics. These people have never experienced hearing their music recorded. So this is opening up, fantastic horizons for people. And so that's just the ability to record with very small devices and very flexible anywhere. And then you can market yourself in a million different ways now. You could look at the web. A lot of people are breaking themselves on the web. And you have your websites, you can sell online. I mean, it's just, from where I started, the possibilities are really incredible. You can make your own art. You can have your own Xerox machine in your house. You can do all your art on your computer. You can do everything. The trick is you have to develop your fan base. First of all, you have to, you have to create music, obviously, that's going to have some appeal to more than 30 people. You have to, through playing, an experience of playing over and over, you'll find out, if your music is resonating with people. And if you feel, wow, geez, a lot of people really like what I do, then it might start off where you initially make a CD and you do all the cover art and everything like that. You might have a CD with only 4 songs on it because that's all you can afford at that point in time. So wherever you go, you take those CDs, give them away, or if you really need to have them pay for themselves, just for a few bucks, and you collect everybody's email address and a way of communicating with them and maintaining that, so that you just keep, everywhere you play, you try to entice people to be part of your mailing list. Where you're playing, you notify everybody where you are. When you get to where you're playing, you poster the place. You never leave it up to anybody else. You run in there, they go to the washroom, bang, there you are. You can make postcards, mail them out to people. You can, and then of course you're doing your email, notify them that way. So it's always trying to maximize. Every time you play somewhere, you should maximize it in any way you can imagine. Whether you try to get a reviewer down, and if you're trying to get reviewers out to review your show, you have to make sure that your thing is really together, because they'll only come once. To get a reviewer to your show is a really difficult thing. Hundreds of people are pounding on them all the time to come out and see you. Now, why should they come out and see you and not somebody else? You have to have a story, something that piques their interest. They come, and you got to make damn sure you guys are fantastic. So that when they leave, they say, "Oh, I was down there. What were they like?" They were, and you have to make sure the club is full. I was down there, and the group was fantastic. There was only about 6 people there. The agency who's heard about you phones the sound guy. He says, "So what was that group like the other night?" "Well, actually they were pretty good, but there wasn't anybody here." So you have to give this aura that it's really something, there's a buzz going. And it's hard work. You have to keep it going all the time. And then merch. Think of things that the fans might want, and that may be more than just a hat, a cap, or a scarf, or a T-shirt. Use your imagination. Little nicks, things that you can sell. You can sell them really reasonably priced, like you're not out to, rip people off, just as long as you're maybe breaking even. To see what you're doing as a business. Keep your books in order. If you have a band, find the person that has the most business sense. Maybe one of the parents of one of the people has experience in that way and is more than willing to be a hockey dad or a hockey mom and take care of that for you. A lot of us get very airy-fairy about the creative process, and we just resist seeing it as a business. You're in the music business because hopefully you want to be able to sustain yourself and just be a normal person, have a house, raise a family, be a normal person. And there's not a lot of musicians are able to do that. They might have a short fling at it, but it's really hard because you're self-employed. You have to constantly be reaching out to the next gig. So it's really important. I mean, simple things like this elder that was talking to us about his experience. Do you know what one of the first things he said to us was, "It's a people business. Make sure your breath smells good." Now that sounds like a really silly thing. But if you're up close, you're in a club, and the music's really loud, and you're trying to talk to one another, and if your breath sound is like really repulsive, that'll turn a person completely off. They're not going to move in, and something as fundamental as that, you have to think like that. When I think back on my life, I have had so many blessings through music. The people I've met, the travels that I've had. In my own personal experience, I should have put more thought into seeing myself as a business. For some reason, I was so engaged in the experience that I was having with music, with the people, with the performing, that I didn't maintain the overview of seeing it as a business. I've been very involved in helping my son in his musical career, and I haven't had enough time available for me to perform very much. But when I do, I go, oh, this is what I do. This is like the easiest thing in the world for me to do. This is the most natural thing. So for me, it's a gift that I've been given, and it makes me feel whole